So you can see over there all the green. That's mostly Amur honeysuckle. It's a non-native invasive species of plant. It's inhabiting the woods. It's all in it. If you look on this side though, you can see right through the trees into the forest, and you mostly have an herbaceous, like ground cover, small things, forbs and such, coming up. So consequently, there's a lot more diversity of plants over here, and some really fantastic native wildflowers that I kind of want to show off. It's Greg Torres. I'm in Mount Airy in Cincinnati. This is a beautiful gem in Cincinnati Parks Department's crown, and the city should be very thankful to have a space of forest this large. A lot of other cities don't have this kind of beautiful setting like this. So let's talk about a couple wildflowers since I'm right next to some. I'll show a few off. First we have, this is wood phlox. Blue phlox I've heard it called. Blue wood phlox I've heard it called. The scientific name is Phlox divaricata. Divaricata just means it like splits in two, and I think that refers to the root system at the bottom under the ground there. However, it's got these kind of pinwheel looking flowers, kind of a pinky to purple to kind of a bluish color. I've seen a lot of variation in them, and I think that they fade with time to different colors as well. Another distinguishing feature of this plant is that the leaves themselves, the clasping onto the stem, there is no petiole. It's just the leaves that clasp onto the stem. So even when this plant hasn't flowered yet, you might see some of the leaves clasping onto the stem before it's actually matured and developed into this beautiful specimen like this. So phlox is a Greek word. Most PH words are Greek in origin, and phlox just means flame. I guess in Europe there's some phlox that are more yellowy or fiery colors. This one of course is not. It's a pinky blue color, quite pretty, and like a lot of phlox, it'll have 5 petals, kind of shaped like a pinwheel. These 5 petals, they're actually fused together to form this tube. And if you look at phlox carefully, you won't see the male and female parts on the outer part of the flower. They're all actually on the interior part of the tube. So you need some really specialized pollinators for this. Something maybe with a long tongue that can stick its tongue down into that tube, or proboscis I should say, to be able to get the pollen on its proboscis and then move to another flower. Phlox, I believe, requires cross-pollination, so it's really important that this plant is properly pollinated, and again, you need a very particular pollinator to access the pollen and the nectar and to achieve pollination with this plant. So again, this is wild blue phlox, wood phlox, blue phlox, Phlox divaricata, and it's a beautiful stunner. This should be in every garden. What else we have? They're not in great shape. I'll give you at least the idea. This is Downy yellow violet. I believe the scientific name is Viola pubescens. Pubescens is in like hairy, downy. Not like the Viola sororia, the blue violets that we have. You'll see that the flower actually comes out of the same stem as the leaves in this case. The Viola sororia, the blue violet, the flower will be born on its own stem. It's pretty. We have both a white variety, purple and yellow, in this forest here. And again, it's a violet, so there's a nectary in the interior there. You can see the kind of purplish burgundy color veination. Those are like nectar guides. They guide the insect where to put its proboscis, its mouth, to access the nectar. So when you see this kind of patterning, these lines on flowers, that's often sometimes what it's for is to guide the insect to where to go. Got some more phlox here. Got this small one here. This is Claytonia virginiana. Spring beauty. You see he's got long, kind of strap-like leaves like this. They're kind of succulent in a way. This flower used to be in the purslane family. Portulaceae or something like that. It's been since moved. Now it's in Montiaceae family of plants recently. And again, there's some pink veination to the interior of the petals there, guiding the insect on where to go. There's a lot of variation. I've seen some with really heavy pink veins and then some with just white petals. And from what I understand, that kind of attracts pollinators at different rates. This plant comes from a bulb underneath the ground. And see, like this leaf looks like it's coming out of the ground in a different place than this other one. It's all probably underneath the ground, the same bulb. It's a really beautiful plant. What else? Let's look up here. This is probably one of my favorites in the springtime. This is Dutchman's breeches. I guess it looks like a Dutchman's pants blowing in the wind. The scientific name on this is Dicentra cucullaria. It looks kind of like the garden ornamental plant bleeding heart. And in fact, they were in the same genus for a while, but they've since moved the bleeding heart to a different genus. I think it's Lamprocampnos or something like that. But there's another relative of this one, Dicentra canadensis, which is the squirrel corn, which looks very similar. The foliage is almost identical, real soft, ferny looking foliage. One easy way to differentiate the two is obviously the pants look, while the squirrel corn almost looks more like bleeding heart. And also squirrel corn, the bulb, the little corm at the bottom, at the base, looks like a little piece of corn. Whereas with Dutchman's breeches, it's red or orangey color, sometimes pink. But this is one of my favorite early spring ephemeral flowers. All the flower parts are very highly modified. They're fused together. See, again, this is a very specialized flower that needs a specialized pollinator to be able to pollinate this. You'll never see, I've never seen honeybees on these flowers. This Dicentra cucullaria. These are the old flowers of spring beauty. I'll go back to that one for a moment. It only has 2 sepals, so that's another way to differentiate it. It's the small little flower we were talking about here. Only 2 sepals on the back. So there's some wildflowers that we have just nearby me while I'm taking this hike. There's a lot more. I could spend all day talking about it. So for comparison's sake, I'll show you here. So these are the purple violets, blue violet, oftentimes called Viola sororia. And as you can see, each flower has its own stem, separate from the stems of each leaf. The yellow violet I just showed, they're on the same stem, the flowers and the leaves. So it's an easy way to kind of differentiate the two. While we're looking at it, let's go ahead and talk about this one too. This is wild ginger, Acerum canadense. This is not a ginger. It's not in the ginger family, Zinzerberraceae. This is in the Aristolochia family, Aristolochiaceae family. And it actually does have a gingery smell, which is probably why it got its common name. However, this contains aristolochic acid and is actually a carcinogen. Actually, there's a beautiful red velvet mite crawling across one of the leaves right there. That's an arachnid. 8 legs, kind of like a tick, except it won't bite into you. Anyway, back to the wild ginger. It's a great ground cover. It's got this rhizome underneath the ground that kind of just creeps along. You can see it's filled in the whole side of the hill here. It's mostly got these kidney-shaped or heart-shaped leaves like this that are kind of iridescent in the foliage, but it's just a really great shade-loving ground cover that's native. A lot of the ground covers that are not from the United States, they end up taking over, like English ivy or winter creeper or something. But this is well behaved and participates with the rest of the ecosystem. And in fact, the flower is quite small. It's down here. It's a reddish color, maroon. It's got 3 petals, and it just lays flat on the ground. It's probably pollinated by ants or beetles or all kinds of other insects that might be crawling around in the leaf litter looking for some nectar. I've even seen slugs inside of the flowers themselves. Later, the flower gives rise to a seed capsule that splits open and has elaiosomes on it, which is just a nutrient-rich appendage that attracts ants. So ants will pick up the seeds and they'll start to disperse them around. They'll eat the elaisome and then throw the rest of the seed away. But that's how wild ginger gets around. A lot of these spring ephemeral flowers that we have in the eastern temperate forest here in North America, a lot of them are distributed by ants. Myrmecochory is the proper scientific name for ant seed dispersal. Myrmec meaning ant, and then chori like dance, like choreography. So it's the ant dance.